The Legends of King Arthur. The Death of Merlin. Illustrated by Mike Phillips. Chapter 1. Darkness surrounded him. Coldness seeped into his bones. He shivered. How he came to be there, he didn't know. He couldn't remember anything, no matter how hard he tried. His mind, usually so clear, was foggy. Drawing on his powers, he tried to summon light. Nothing happened. He frowned and tried again, willing the energy to come, drawing it from the earth. A spark gone in an instant, then nothing. What was happening to him? Sighing, he rested his head against the jagged rock at his back, ignoring the way it dug into his skin. That was when he sensed it. Magic. He could feel it in the air. Could taste it like the finest wine Camelot had ever served. Then he heard them, whispered voices. He searched the darkness, but found only shadows. He couldn't tell where the voices were coming from, only that they seemed everywhere at once, near and far. Then, suddenly, one was right by his ear. It was a woman's voice. "Now you are mine," it said. Merlin gasped as he was thrown from the vision, his consciousness hurled back into his body. He stumbled and almost fell as he became aware of his surroundings. The sounds and scents of the forest returned. The whispers of the cave were replaced by a leafy rustle. The coldness became the fading warmth of late afternoon. Merlin reached out and leaned heavily against the nearest tree. Visions, like the one he had just experienced, came upon him without warning, but they hadn't shown his own fate until recently. Lately he saw himself trapped, sometimes frozen in place, sometimes tied to a rock. It was always dark, and he could never see where he was or who was with him. This was the first time he had heard voices. He finally understood other people's anger. It was hard knowing only parts of your future. As a boy, when he had told King Vortigern of the dragons beneath the lake, and many times since then with different people, Merlin had not understood their frustration. Now, given mere glimpses of his own fate, he understood it perfectly. Merlin straightened as a rabbit, obviously spooked, shot out from the undergrowth. It leapt over tree roots before disappearing into the deepening shadows on the other side of the path. Evening was drawing in. He had been away from Camelot for long enough. Merlin's basket was already full, with more than enough plants for his needs. But he loved being amongst the trees, surrounded by nature, and tended to spend longer on these outings than needed. Merlin took a deep, earthy breath before setting off along the path home. A sound stopped him after only a few steps. It sounded like a sob. Following the sound, Merlin came across a woman sitting against an oak tree. "My lady?" Merlin's voice was too loud in the near silence of the forest. The woman's head snapped up, her long blonde hair whipping across her young face. There was fear in her eyes. "Do not be afraid, my lady," he murmured, soothingly. "I am here to help." Who are you?" she whimpered. Merlin approached slowly and knelt before her. "My name is Merlin. I am King Arthur's advisor. What happened? Are you hurt?" The woman nodded. She wiped her tear-stained face with a trembling hand. "Camelot is not far," Merlin said. "Shall we go together?" "I don't think I can stand." Merlin offered his arm. "Then let me assist you." The woman hesitated before reaching out and taking his arm. Merlin helped her to her feet. Then the two set off together towards Camelot. Chapter 2. By the time they arrived in Camelot, Merlin was almost carrying the woman. Seeing this, King Arthur ordered a litter to be brought and for the woman to be taken to the infirmary. As Merlin began to follow her, Arthur placed a hand on his arm. "Wait, Merlin. Tell me what happened." One moment you were going to collect plants, the next you return with a lady? I was on my way back when I heard her crying, Merlin explained. I couldn't leave her, Your Majesty? No, of course not, Arthur agreed. Do you know what's wrong with her? Merlin shook his head. She's clearly in a lot of pain. But I thought it would be better to bring her here and make her comfortable before we try to find the cause. She is in the best hands, Arthur smiled. I'm sure you will soon discover what ails her. Bowing, Merlin took his leave. He hurried into the castle, along the corridor to the spiral staircase that led to the infirmary. Merlin arrived just as Altha finished checking the lady over. Altha was the mother of 6 burly boys who were now all serving Camelot as squires. She took no nonsense from her patients, but she was good at recognizing sickness and disease. Altha left the woman to rest on the bed before going to share her findings with Merlin. Overall, she is well, she announced. Though she does have terrible bruising to her left knee, and she may have sprained her left wrist. I've put a splint on it, just in case. Did she say what happened to her? Altha shook her head. No. I think she is too frightened. But whether she is frightened of us or what happened, I cannot say. Merlin watched the woman's face relax as she drifted into a peaceful sleep, all traces of pain and fear gone. I gave her a sleeping draught, Altha added. Merlin. Then we will leave her to rest, said. Over the next few days, Merlin visited the young woman often. Each time she was either asleep or refusing to speak. Then one day, Merlin was in the infirmary mixing a draught to help ease the lady's pain when a quiet voice asked him, "What are you doing?" At first, Merlin thought he had imagined it. But the question was repeated, louder this time. He turned with the mortar and pestle in his hands to find the young woman watching him intently. Glancing down at the contents of the bowl, Merlin said, "I'm mixing some plants that will help ease your pain." The woman moved to the edge of her bed and gingerly placed her bare feet on the stone floor. "What plants are you mixing?" Merlin smiled. For the first time since he had met her, she seemed interested in, rather than just afraid of, what was going on around her. For the first time, too, Merlin noticed how beautiful she was. He held out the bowl. "Metasweet and lemon balm," he explained. "Metasweet will ease your pain. Lemon balm will ease your fears?" She looked up at him. "You must think me silly to be so afraid of you when you have helped me so much." Merlin shook his head. "Not at all. You have clearly had a fright, and now you are in a strange place amongst strangers. A little caution is natural." Merlin finished preparing the poultice. "Now," he said, "I'll just place this on your wrist. It will soon help with the pain." "Thank you," she smiled. Merlin applied the poultice gently. "I shall leave you now, my lady," he said when he was done. "Nimue," she replied. The word, spoken so quietly, was nearly missed by Merlin. "I'm sorry?" "My name," the woman said shyly, "is Nimue." Merlin smiled. "It's nice to finally meet you, Nimue." With that, Merlin took his leave, but the smile did not leave his face. Chapter 3. He had never felt happier. The sun shone down through the trees, dappling the forest path ahead like stars. Birdsong filled the air, but best of all, Nimue walked beside him.